So when I take a look at my application now, I can see I have a header row here that's using this light gray and a bold font. I might want to make my totals row look like that as well, so that it just kind of sets it apart, so I know that's a totals row. So to do that, I will probably create another sub, and I'm going to call it total row formatting. Or total row format. And the first thing I need to do is find that total row. So to find it, I'm going to go to B1000 index L up to get my top left, and E1000 index L up to get my bottom right. I wouldn't start at the top and go down, because if I did, it wouldn't find the totals row. Remember, the index L properties will stop when there's a blank cell, so it would find the last data row instead of the total row. So I need to go to the bottom and go up. Once I've done that, once I've found it, and I can prove that I found it by using the select, and I'm correctly selecting the right ranges, I can modify the font property, the bold sub-property of the font property, and I can set it to true. So now when I run it, hopefully we'll see the fonts turn bold. And we do. So I can modify the font properties, and it has several sub-properties. I'll put them up. We'll look at them here in a minute. Italic, the size, the font name, things like that. I can also modify the interior properties of a range, and that's basically the cell color. So it's equivalent of going here and coming up to here and clicking on the color that we want. So to demonstrate that, we will modify the interior property, the color sub-property, and there's a lot of colors we can choose. We'll look at them in detail here in a minute. Right now I'm just going to pick a simple one. VB has 8 built-in colors that we can use, so I'm going to choose one of those. I'm going to choose VB red for right now. And it's working correctly. So here are some of the most common font properties that I'm going to modify. I can change the font name to a different font, and that's the equivalent of highlighting a cell and coming up here and changing it to something different. I can change the font size, and again, that's the equivalent of coming and changing this, simply changing the font size. I can set it to bold, italic, and underline. And these values can either be true, or you could put false in there. And I've just noted that as a comment. I can underline a font, and this is the most common underline. There are others. You can look them up if you're interested. That's probably the one we'll use the most. And then the actual font color. So that's the equivalent of coming over here and choosing a different color. And again, we'll look at some colors, but right now I'm just using a simple built-in VB color. Then with the interior, probably the most common thing I'll do is change the cell color to something different. And right now I'm just using those built-in VB choices. So when I do this, the total row looks like this. I have the interior color and the font color the same. Let me change this. And I can use as many or as few of these as I want to. This is just common properties that we'll modify. When I look at how I put each of these in the program, I notice that I have this the same for all of these fonts, and then there's some sub-properties modified. And I have this range specification in common with the interior. So this is a lot of extra typing, cutting and pasting. If we need to make a change, it's a lot of looking through it to find replaces. If we needed to make that be 10,000 or something like that, we'd have to go make all of those changes. So we're looking for a way we can do it better, more efficiently. We're looking to refactor our code. Not add anything new, not take anything away, just do the same thing we're doing right now, only more efficiently. And the with statement lets us do that. So let's take a look at how we can use with. When I'm using with, I can replace all of these common components like this. I can cut that out or copy that out, and I can with and I no longer need them here. If I open a with, I have to close a with. So now it's saying this particular range specification, I can just apply it in front of each one of these dots. So the computer will know this particular range specification .interior.color is VB red. This particular range specification .font, .name, .font, .size, .font, .bold. So the computer, when it's processing this, will stick this in front of each of these. Now by doing this, if I need to make a change to my range specification, I only have to do it in one place, and all of these properties will pick that up. So it's way better than going through and having to modify something 5, 6, 10, 15, 20 times. Now if I look, I have all of these font properties in common. I can have another with statement here. And then I can remove the dot font. Again, I open a with, I have to close a with. So this is a nested with statement. So as the computer is processing this, it will stick this range specification in front of interior. And then it will stick it in front of font, and then it will put the range specification and dot font in front of name, size, bold, italic. Okay? So it's a way to type less and a way to be more efficient. So let's test it and see if it works. I've knocked out bold, italic, and underline. I don't need those, and I've changed my size here. So let me calculate the average. And then after I've calculated the average, let me format the row. And our with statements seem to be working well. As I'm looking at the coding, indentation and spacing starts to become really important. I can easily see now that the with statement opens here and closes here because they are in line vertically. And then I know that the next indentation in would be everything that applies inside of that with statement. So first thing we're going to do is specify this range and then the dot interior property. Then my second with statement starts here, which is basically right behind this range specification, and it's the dot font property. And then everything about the dot font property, the dot name property, size, and color properties are indented. So I know these are inside of this with. Here's my open and here's my close because they are in line vertically. I have everything spaced out neatly so that it makes sense for me. Again, there's no computational cost anymore to having blanks and lines and indentation and those kinds of things in our code. The computer can handle it just fine. It doesn't slow it at all. But it makes it much more human readable when it comes time to start trying to troubleshoot this. So make sure that you're being cautious with your indentations and spacing and those kinds of things. So one other useful feature is being able to call a sub from within another sub. So if I look here, I have a subroutine for formatting the total row. I have a sub for clearing the total row. I have a sub for calculating the totals row. And I've got one for entering students. So after I have calculated the total row, I want to format it. I want that formatting to come down. So I can leave the formatting logic in a different sub, and then I can just call it. And the command is just simply call. So when I run the sub to calculate this total row, first it'll count the rows, then it'll use that to offset and figure averages, and then the last thing it'll do, it will call this sub, which handles all the formatting. So it looks like this. Now, the other thing that I may want to do when I enter a new student score, if I just enter it now, it'll keep going and it will overwrite, and this formatting will get messy. So what I might want to do is, before I start collecting the student scores, I might want to clear out this total row. And so I can call this particular sub right around here. And the other thing I want to do, as soon as a student score has been entered, I want to calculate the total row. So now if I choose to enter a new student, it should clear this and let me enter the new student, and it does. And then after it enters the new student, it calculates the total row. After it calculates the totals row here, it calls the format and it formats it. So there's a lot of logic that comes into how we can call them and where we need to call them and those kinds of things. But having our subs clearly defined around logic, we can call them as we need to.